Hello. In this video, I'm going to talk about doubtful accounts or bad debts, which is another type of adjusting entry. While depreciation applies to depreciable non-current assets, doubtful accounts or bad debts applies to accounts receivable. Now the question is how? Over the year, you will come across transactions and there will be times when you need to record accounts receivable. And at year end, before preparing the statements, you may be provided information about your customers which may make you doubtful about your receivables with them. Like, for example, you learn that they are operating at a loss. And because of that information, it is just proper to prepare an adjusting entry to account for the uncollectible portion of that receivable. To illustrate, assume this transaction. On July 15, 2020, rendered services on account 100 pesos. So to journalize this, debit accounts receivable, and credit service revenue 100 pesos. And this is your initial entry, which may require an adjusting entry later because you have an accounts receivable. Okay, let's proceed. It was estimated at year end that a portion of this receivable, this one, is uncollectible. Meaning, the amount here, 100, may not be collected entirely. So you prepare an adjusting entry on December 31. And the pro forma for doubtful accounts: debit, doubtful accounts expense, credit, allowance for doubtful accounts. For the amount, I will discuss it later. Okay, so this is the pro forma: debit, doubtful accounts expense, credit, allowance for doubtful accounts. For the account titles, this is found in the income statement, part of the expenses, and its normal balance is debit. While this one is found in the balance sheet. It is a contra asset account and its normal balance is credit. Now, how do we present allowance for doubtful accounts in the balance sheet? Say this is the heading, and after the heading, you will have the write down of your current assets. And let's say the first one is accounts receivable, 100 pesos. The accounts receivable here will be followed by the contra asset account. Allowance for doubtful accounts, let's say 10 pesos. And since this is a contra asset account, this is deducted to get the net realizable value of accounts receivable, which is 90 pesos. And this is how you present allowance for doubtful accounts in the balance sheet. Normally, this is computed in the notes, but to simplify the discussion, I presented it this way. Given this kind of computation, some of you may be wondering, can we just credit accounts receivable instead of allowance for doubtful accounts? Because anyway, we will reduce the value of the accounts receivable in the presentation. The answer is no. Why? Because if you credit AR, that is similar to saying that you are 100% sure that you will not collect from that customer. And of course, that is not the case. You are just doubtful. Okay? That's why instead of crediting AR here, accounts receivable, you will credit allowance for doubtful accounts. Now, how do we compute the amounts in the entry? For starters, I will be giving you steps, no? But once you get used to it, everything becomes automatic. Okay, so anyway, I'll start step 1. For the first step, get the ending balance of the accounts receivable, or get the AR end. Okay, and then for the second part, get the uncollectibility percentage of this one. Okay, meaning the portion of the accounts receivable which may not be collected anymore. That's the second step. Third step, get the product of these two. Meaning ARN times uncollectibility percentage to get what we call the required allowance. Required allowance, which is also the ending balance of the allowance for doubtful accounts. Step 4. Set up the T account of allowance for doubtful accounts. I'll place it here. Assuming you are in your first year, so the beginning balance of allowance for doubtful accounts is 0. Credit side, why? Because this is the normal balance of allowance for doubtful accounts. And then the answer in step 3, you place it here. The ending balance or the balance after adjustment. And this is step 4, setting up the T account of allowance for doubtful accounts. Step 5, get the plug in the T account. Okay, by plug I mean the amount which will complete this T account. No. What will complete this T account? A credit to allowance for doubtful accounts by 500 this side. And the amount placed here, 500, is actually the amount placed in the adjusting entry. Okay? So that's how you do it. To practice, let's try answering this one. So you are in year 2, second year, with the following on January 1. So this is the first day of the second year. You have accounts receivable of 100,000 and allowance for doubtful accounts of 10,000. Okay? So this is your year 2 January 1 data. And right away, you are provided that it was estimated at year end that 15% of the AR is uncollectible. Okay, so since you are not given information of what happened this year, you will just assume that nothing happened to your accounts receivable from January 1 to December 31. Meaning to say, this amount, your AR here, 100,000, is also the balance on December 31. Okay? Now, let's prepare the adjusting entry. December 31. Debit. Doubtful. I'm using the pro forma. Doubtful accounts expense. Credit. Allowance for doubtful accounts. And then for the amount, again, step 1, get the ending balance of your receivable. In this case, 100,000. Second step, get the uncollectibility percentage, 15%. Third step, get the product to get the required allowance or ADA end. Okay, so this is step 3, 15,000. This is the ending balance of your allowance for doubtful accounts. And then step 4, set up the T account. Since you are in your second year and you are given a beginning balance for allowance for doubtful accounts, the credit side on January 1 is not 0, no? Because you have a beginning balance. So here, credit 10,000. And then, use the answer in step 3 for the ending balance, 15,000. That's our T account. And then for the last step, get the plug here. So the plug that will complete this table is credit to ADA by 5,000. And this is also the answer or the amount in the adjusting entry. So 5,000 here, 5,000 here. This is your adjusting entry. Okay? So I guess that's everything. Thank you.